So, last week, I actually did not get through the entire slideshow. So, that's why we're starting in the middle of one. And for those of you that were, just a quick refresher, we got introduced to the candidate character sheets last week. Simple scoring system for policies and the candidate. And then we also handed out a topic sheet. So hopefully next week I'll have a topic that everybody's going to talk about, and I'll present whatever, at minimum, 2 sides of the topic, and then hopefully if it's a topic I can easily find something in the Bible, we'll present a 3rd side as well, if it's a 3rd side. So with that in mind, today we're actually going to take a closer look at the texting and driving, and just kind of a sample method of how we're going to dive into 2 sides. But before we get into that, are there any questions on last week's lessons or previous week? No? All right. So, texting and driving. Right now, in 2016, not right now, 3 years ago, there were 37,461 highway deaths. Now, this particular side, the left-hand side of this is going to be, we don't need to put a ban on texting and driving. That's the viewpoint here. We know the reason we want to get rid of texting and driving is because it causes deaths and everything. So I'm not going to go into that side of things too much today. I'm going to go into the lesser known side of it today. So the reasons why we shouldn't do that. Now, excuse me, 9% of those deaths, 3,450, were caused by a distraction of some sort. And of that subset of 3,450, only 14% of that subset, 486, were directly related to cell phones. And that's calls, texting, wireless, Bluetooth connectivity. And so one of the major arguments right now is don't do it, because it's not the major issue. The major issue is 28% of that 37,000 drunk driving. So why do they want to go for a ban on texting and driving? An article I found that highlights these numbers and everything. It reads some of the following here. Compared to the 28% highway fatalities associated with alcohol-impaired driving, it's clear that calls for drastic federal policies appear grossly out of proportion to the actual problem. Moreover, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety's Highway Loss Data Institute cautions against texting while driving bans. They note that most distraction factors have nothing to do with texting or cell phone use. These include adjusting the stereo, eating, drinking, retrieving items from the floor or glove compartment, and talking to other passengers. Insurers have real skin in the game as they wish to avoid paying out crash claims. So that's the insurance companies, like, yeah, of course they're in it for the money, obviously, but they are stating there that the majority of these crashes, distraction, even that 9% distraction deaths are not cell phone. It's talking to the passengers, or I've dropped my hamburger or a fry down on the other side there. Let me go get it. There we go. We're off the road now. So that is that's one viewpoint. Why not to do it? So. But what does the Bible have to say about texting and driving? Anybody? So obviously they didn't have cars back then. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have texting and driving. So we can't really look for it that way. But what we can look for is taking responsibility. Because when you sit behind the driver's seat of a car, you're taking a certain responsibility into your hands. Not only are you taking responsibility for yourself, your car, your passengers, you're also taking responsibility on for everybody else out there on the road. So, there we go. James 1:22.
Texting, driving, got into the Bible.
But be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. Now, that, not quite, directly related to responsibility for texting and driving, but the concept behind this here is Time reported on a recent study that questioned habitual texters. Almost 100% said that texting while driving is dangerous. Yet 75% admitted to still doing it. And apparently many of us are hearers, but not doers. So if we agree that texting and driving is dangerous, and we say that yes, we should not do that, let's be doers of that. Of course, that can extend beyond texting and driving. That's this responsibility can extend on to changing the radio station or reaching for that fry that you dropped in the passenger side. I forget that I have subpoints sometimes. And I talk about them and then they show up. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So this takes on a different responsibility we have, but it still relates to texting and driving, or it can be related to texting and driving. I now really have to watch what I do, because my daughter is going to do what I do, and she'll do what my wife does. So that is, make sure that anything you do, you are taking that responsibility, and you're not going to influence other people to also do something dangerous. Again, another subpoint. And then Genesis 4:9. And the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And in this particular article I found here, and I agree with the sentiment, it says, yes, we are a brother's keeper when it comes to texting while driving, or at least the law is heading that way. And that referring to, the laws that are coming in. Recent court rulings suggest that people could get sued for knowingly texting with someone who is driving if an accident occurs. So the law is starting to, going to try and reach out even further. It's going to try and go, not just go after the driver who was texting, but go after the person that was texting the driver if they were knowingly texting somebody who's driving. But I take this particular, are we our brother's keeper? I take that a little bit further. And if you are driving and texting, yes, you're responsible, and you're ignoring that responsibility you have. You're letting yourself get distracted and could potentially cause an accident. Now, I couldn't find anything necessarily that said that we don't have to worry about that in the Bible. There's nothing. The Bible doesn't say, because the numbers were small of the number of deaths related to texting and driving, you don't worry about it. You keep on texting and driving. There was nothing in there about that. And while there's nothing directly about not texting and driving, the fact that we find in there that we do need to be responsible for ourselves, and we are, in a manner of speaking, our brother's keeper, and we do need to train up our children in the way they're supposed to go. What's so bad about not texting and driving? And another subject. Right.
Are those
Stewards
the
are
highest and the
organizations.
lowest, the 28 and the 9, or is there something?
Pardon?
Are those the 9% is maybe the lowest of fatality reasons for, and 28 the higher, or those just two that?
That's just the two particular article that I found. They didn't go
about
into
what the other 25 or 24.
Yeah, there's.
the other higher number.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the others are.
1,000. I was just curious.
Yeah, I understand. I'll have to look into that now that you brought it up.
You are on a roll, and I stopped you. I'm sorry. Me too.
So now some of the ways that you can stop that are candidates that we've been looking at. One was put more police out there. The other said let's use the technology that we're already using technology, so let's continue to use it. Using near field communication to decide, okay, the phone's down the side of the car, so it disables certain features that are generally considered distractions. So in this particular case, when it comes to the character sheet, the candidate character sheet, and awarding extra points, while the Bible verses we looked at are not specific to texting and driving, they are well enough in line with the responsibility we're taking on that any candidate that is proposing a ban on some kind of texting and driving gets an extra point because the Bible agrees with them, at least in this particular case. And there are other topics we'll get into that I will not say which way the Bible leans because it could lean either way. But this is a low hostile topic that I will go and take a side on.
Well, what about thou shalt not kill? right?
Yeah, that's another good one. And there's another one I like to go to a lot of times when people start talking about, well, the government is wanting me to do this, it's wanting me to do that. And as long as it's not something that's immoral, the government's wanting me to do, I like to quote, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Now, in that particular context, it was referring to the taxes. Who was it? Peter? Who was not wanting to pay the taxes?
Okay, so no, that was one of the Pharisees came up to Jesus and said, okay, which are we supposed to pay our taxes or not?
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So, and then God or Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar. So it's, follow the laws of the land as long as it's not telling you to do something against the Bible. So that, oftentimes I'll just say, go with that. And it's, there are many things we can find that if you do this thing and you end up killing somebody, you end up breaking the law, you end up getting a ticket, you end up getting into a car wreck, maybe nobody died, but both vehicles are totaled, your insurance, and you go, well, there's plenty, any different reference. The ones we brought up here, they apply to different situations as the result of the texting and driving. And then, if you do end up killing somebody, because you're texting and driving, then thou shalt not kill. One of the 10 Commandments becomes a relevant scripture for that.
There's also I think it's in Leviticus, maybe talks about if your oxen sort of like hurt someone or kill someone, then you're responsible for it.
Yeah.
Again, it's the same sort of thing.
I couldn't. I knew something about that, but I could not find it.
I was just looking and I couldn't find it either.
So now my larger point on this here is, when I first asked, does anybody know what the Bible says about texting and driving? There was a lot of clueless faces around there. No offense. There were a lot of clueless. I was clueless about it initially when I started looking into it, but it doesn't take much to start to realize that we need to look at further than just what the actual policy is or what the action is. Look at the implications of that action. What are we taking on by doing that action? And for a lot of these, the ones where the legislation or the politicians may be bringing in viewpoints or policies that are going to affect us or are going to create new laws, we need to think about, okay, this law that's coming in is going to stop me from doing this or allow me to do this. What responsibilities am I taking on? What risks am I taking on by doing this? And beyond just the risk of it's against the law, what is the risk that could happen that by the action actually say that? And then that's where you find the part that you can go look at the Bible for and see what it actually says and apply that to whether or not you award points to that. Because you may have to vote for somebody that has an opinion about something that you that you disagree with, but you agree more than you disagree with them. Lesser of two evils. I don't have it with me right now. Anybody ever seen the movie Master and Commander? Okay. It's an old seafaring movie, and there's this point where the captain brings the doctor in. The officers are having their meal, and their biscuits have weevils in them. But the captain asks the doctor, of these two weevils, which one would you choose in a race? And the doctor's like, well, the speed, the breadth of this, and I would choose this one. And the captain's like, silly doctor, don't you know you always choose the lesser of two evils? It's much better. I'll have to find the clip and bring it.
That's great.
The lesser of two evils. So that, unfortunately, that is the reality of our politics. A lot of times it is lesser of two evils. But figuring that out sometimes is hard. And so that's why, let me just, actually I'll go forward because I have another image of it. Go forward. There.
Before you go to that one,
Yes.
flip back to the first one, please.
This one or further back?
Back.
This one.
The cell phone uses.
Mm-hmm.
Is the 14%, does that include, you said something about Bluetooth, does that include hands-free?
Yes,
It does include hands-free.
it does. I'll read you the exact article on that.
Everything that's a distraction.
I think if I'm not using my hands, then I'm not distracted. I am.
Your hands are on the wheel, but your mind isn't.
I
Yeah,
got
that's
that.
right.
Yeah.
So I can be arrested.
That's
I
the
mean,
hardest
is
part.
our law? Is that
Not
law?
yet. This is all about. It's mostly a law that you're trying to get in right now. The law is if a cop sees you doing this,
Yes, but if I'm not.
Or
holding
worse
it
than
up.
that.
if you're not
This.
holding it, yeah, looking
You see
down.
a lot of that.
Now Greenville is where that's in effect.
Right.
Easley, Anderson does not have that law yet.
Okay.
Williamston, as far as I know, doesn't have it yet. But Greenville being one of the biggest areas, I mean, it's you get them 85, you're in Greenville real quick, and if the cops even suspects that's, in my opinion, that's kind of an issue right now because the cop just has to suspect that you're on your phone and they can pull you over.
And the cop is not paying attention if he's looking in your car.
Yeah, yeah. There are some.
When does that law come before this group?
Oh,
It's
In
in
this-
Greenville now.
It is.
yeah, Greenville's already got it.
Greenville's had a good
Okay.
while.
In this particular scenario, I just had fake candidates, clones of myself, and I made up some policies.
Oh, good for you.
Oh
So-
yes, you missed it. Yeah, y'all weren't here last week. Okay, yeah.
No,
so
we
this
weren't.
is these are the the positions of
David.
David's two clones.
Not two clones. So they just same policies, just different approaches to the policies. And since texting and driving is one that's an actual thing, it's how you're going to drive. Well, the others are real as well, but texting and driving was the least hostile topic for me to have an opinion on.
I distracted you.
No, it's fine. It's
You're gonna
fine.
arrest me now.
He's not driving. It's fine.
Yeah. Now there was also have been some YouTube personalities that have this guy cut out a piece of wood and painted it black and drove around holding it up to his ear, and a cop pulled him over. And the cop says, "Well, you're on your phone," and the guy just handed over this piece of wood painted black, and the cop just kind of threw it back down and walked away because then he couldn't do anything because it was not an actual phone. So that's another, like, well, what do you do with that kind of law? The law says it's a phone, and if the cop pulls you over, it's not a phone, then they can't, there's no ticket there, but the guy was still very much, he was baiting the cop.
Holding
into
it as
yeah,
if he was talking.
as if he was a phone. So I think, I don't know, there's a lot of nuances to that particular law that need to be accounted for, because that particular guy was one of those people who was like, he didn't feel like it should be banned. So he went out there to just mess with the cops and waste their time, which wastes taxpayers' money, because the cops then doing something that they could have been working on something else. So when we get to the scoring sheet, the whole purpose of the sheet is to simplify these complex topics. And so in this particular case of the texting and driving, I would say that any candidate, so both of our candidates here would get an extra point because the Bible, for the most part, agrees with, that's a irresponsible thing to do, to text and drive. And then you award the extra points accordingly to, do you prefer the technological solution or do you prefer more boots on the ground solution? And then you total them up. All right, so in conclusion, and I actually have them all, they all pop up at once. I'm inconsistent with my slides. It's great. So it is a simple scoring system. It does not involve the parties. So that's our major point throughout this entire series is we forget about the parties. We don't care if you're Republican, right? We don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, alphabetical order. We don't care if you're independent or anything else. Your party does not matter. As we looked at in the first lesson, dividing ourselves up into parties only causes more strife. It is partially the cause of the Civil War that we have, because we were divided on how we wanted to view things. And we also have examples of some of our earlier presidents, George Washington in particular, said, don't do it, because you're going to cause issues if you split yourselves up into parties. So while we may not be able to do anything about the parties right now, we can't go up there and vote, hey, get rid of the parties, stop doing all this. we can at least ignore the parties when it comes down to deciding who we're going to vote for. And then, of course, the scoring system here, because it doesn't have any parties or anything, it allows us to have an objective viewpoint of the candidates and vote for who best represents our own viewpoints, and not just because they're in the party that we've always voted for in the
But
past.
don't the parties sort of control the candidates? That's what they mean.
They do.
Depends on.
They do.
Yeah.
It all depends. There are, I mean, there's not that it's totally conspiracy theory, but there are thousands and thousands of conspiracy theories out there. It's like, you know, this person is controlled by this organization and everything else. So we really never know what's going to happen once we vote somebody in. But that's also why, you know, it's in the scoring sheet you have, if they've served before, you got the ability to score them based on what they did before. Did they fulfill their promises or did they not? And if they didn't, then you're like, yeah, they're probably being controlled by somebody else. They got in there and they got, you know, power hungry, and so we don't want to vote for them again. And, you know, if they haven't served before, then how are they conducting their campaign? Are they doing the mudslinging? Are they making up lies? And that's another thing. We need to look into anything one candidate says about another candidate. Is it true or not? I've fallen into the trap that, you know, if the candidate I was really behind said something about another candidate,
Right.
oh, that must be true. They did this, they did that. And in the last couple of years, you know, on Facebook, there's always these people, and I'm in a couple of Marine Corps groups that post some things. And I got called out once. That's why I changed. I got called out, and I found out that what I posted and what I was supporting was absolutely wrong. The person never said that thing. So I was like,
That's why the newspapers and televisions will do that
yeah.
24 hours after something
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
issue comes up, saying that part of it may have been correct, the rest of it's out.
But they usually
Bunk, you know,
this,
and then
this,
vice
this,
versa.
this. Oh, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the problem with the internet is once it's on the internet, even if you delete it from your Facebook page, or you delete it from your Instagram, you delete it from your Twitter, it's still out there. I can still go find it. Because there's a website called the Wayback Machine. And the moment you post something, it's got it, and it's there on the internet forever.
The Wayback Machine.
The Wayback Machine.
Well, and
goes
it also
way back.
gets it gets ingested into the system. So
Mhm.
if a newspaper makes a false claim,
Right.
it doesn't matter if the next day they make a retraction. It's already in the system, and so
Yeah.
then you have other places referring to that original article. And
The retraction doesn't get nearly as much repeated
Yeah.
posting as the original article does, so everybody just goes with that one thing. So that's, you know, the Marine Corps groups I'm in, they post a lot of different things that I'm like, let me go and look into this. And sometimes they post something that I already know is wrong. And sometimes I'll decide, yeah, I'm going to call them out and say, hey, look, here's the website that shows that this is not actually wrong. Try my best to, you know, here's the information, here's the real information. And while maybe it doesn't help these guys out, maybe it doesn't, maybe they don't care, maybe they like, well, that doesn't agree with my story, so I'm going to ignore your facts.
Don't confuse it with the facts my mind's made up.
Yeah, exactly. Even if we can't get others to look at the actual facts, we ourselves need to. And I think that's a huge responsibility as Christians. We're supposed to be all about the truth. So looking into that and doing the research to make sure we know something before we go and repeat it, and we know that it is actually a fact, that's a huge responsibility that we have, I feel.
I saw a video last night that suggested that the comment section for like YouTube videos and all these sorts of things is the new public forum,
Mhm.
where it's the thing that we as just people have access to. And there was a case where someone had made a misrepresentation of something that someone had said, and there was huge outpouring of all these people saying, no, that is not correct. That's what they said was this, and you know, like, what, I don't know why you're saying that, and all of that sort of response. And if we do that, then we'll see less and less of this. You know, I'm just gonna snap John Benjamin. I'm gonna throw it out there because it gets a lot of
A lot of views.
interest and
Yeah.
views and that sort of stuff. But if people are going to come down on us really quickly, or on people who are producing these things really quickly, if they say something incorrect, no, it's not. Oh, I like that person, so I don't like what you said. But it's no, that's factually incorrect with how you're characterizing that.
Yeah.
If we as the people do that, then we'll see less.
And that's something I've noticed in a lot of news media. They love to take things out of context. They'll take a little snippet and they will play that over and over again, and then that makes that person look like something. But if you have the entire context, they were actually disagreeing with that statement. They were saying anybody that says this and then they say the thing, those people are wrong.
Right.
Those people will just take that thing and make that person look like
Same way people quote the Bible.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The moment you start taking things out of context, there's a moment you start going down the wrong path, and that I will not waver on.
Don't you think some of these people, they're trying to be the first and the loudest with whatever they're
Absolutely.
producing?
They don't check the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I have got this wonderful smear and I'm going to carry it to the top of the mountain here.
That's exactly what they do. And it's all about the clicks and views for them. Everybody got their topic picked out?
Mm-hmm.
I'll collect them anonymously.
I'll put my name on this one because
Vote for 3, honey.
I didn't hear that.
You can vote for 3, or if you got, there's blank space there if you want to add something in.
only 3.
Well,
This is the
three
vote.
plus
This is voting. Huh?
This is the ones that have the most votes. I'm going to organize them from least or most to least. And here you go.
Do something wrong.
Here you go.
Oh, there you go.
I'll organize them from most votes to least votes, and I will do a similar to how I did the Texas driving bill. Be a lot more thorough. And if the Confederate flag comes up as being the most voted for, you're in for a wild ride because I know the Civil War like the back of my hand.
There you go. All right.
Oh, I want to take that.
I'm a history buff too.
Yeah, we have to learn from our history or we're doomed to repeat it. Any other questions or comments?
I just sent you a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this one I need to watch later?
Yeah, it's good. It would be good for the class.
Yeah.
It's good.
Let's see. If I want to be anonymous anyway first. Because then I'll get his and I'll know what he voted for. If I go through the name. So I get it.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess that's all I got for today.
It's great.
I didn't get through all my slides last week, and then I didn't have enough slides to finish up another list.
No, you're
We're on round time?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting about the texting and driving thing, because you have an opinion, yes or no. And then when you broke down how the driving was more of a threat.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. And I'm sure I'm not going to specifically call out the policy right now, but there's, and you'll figure it out. There is another major conversation going on right now revolving around the type of death method, or method of killing people. And you'd be surprised how much not fact is being put out there about it right now. The thing they're saying is causing it is not what's causing it. The thing they're trying to get rid of is not being used to do this.
Is this done by the state?
Huh?
Is this something being done by the state as
He's trying to be really.
Well, it'll be the states will have a choice in it. A lot of our senators and representatives are trying to get the federal government to do something about it as well. President Trump has passed some legislation regarding it, but they're focused on the wrong thing. They're not going to stop what's happening, and that's from the fact, both sides of the facts of it. So but that applies to everything that they try to do. There's both sides of every argument puts out there. They put out some truth, but they also put out a lot of lies about their policies, and they're doing that to try and get people to vote for them. I mean, that's in the end, that's their
Massaging numbers.
Yeah.
Where you go, oh, well, this is a big problem. Well, compared to what? What's the actual fact?
Yeah.
Depends on who contributes to the campaign as
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, absolutely. And I was going to say that, you know, it's not just the parties, it's
The money
who's
that-
giving
well. It's
them
the
money.
money that rolls
All you gotta
Only
do
we
is
could flush
serve,
out the system.
go serve, I've twice been on death penalty juries.
Mm.
It's amazing
Never forget it.
how cause you don't stop and think about it. I mean, that's a tremendous big issue, but, you know, you don't think about
When
it.
somebody
But
else
get
has to
on
make
there
that
when you're
decision.
one of the 12 people that's got to say. Thumbs up, thumbs down, on that. And changed my whole moral judgment of that.
Yeah.
You know, that's a scary thing.
Well, if there's nothing else, we'll go and close in prayer and be dismissed. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to come here today to learn from your word and to find the nuances in the Bible that we can use to help us make our decisions in our political voting and beliefs. Help us to be able to go forward from here today and research and know our facts, and help us to learn from your word in the service this morning, and have a good rest of the day. And thank you for this day in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for doing this. Boy, this
well.
is so timely.
How much more do you do?
So right now, the rest of it's going to be the policies that were voted for. I'm going to do the deep dives into both opinions,